Hi, I'm Pam Tenyas. Welcome to Volusia Magazine. On our program today, Holly Smith will tell us about the endangered manatee that seek refuge from cold winter temperatures at Blue Springs State Park. We'll see that on Holly's report, Volusia Here and Now.
This week I'll take you to one of Volusia's many eco resources. Blue Springs State Park combines the historical and the environmental with outdoor activities. I'll give you a look at what the park has to offer in just a few minutes.
And Dave Byron will be talking to Steve Cook about efforts to bring TWA flights into Daytona Beach International Airport. Steve is the Air Service Marketing Specialist at DBIA, and we'll find out about that and other efforts to bring more flights into our airport. And now turning from air travel to buses, we've learned that Votrans Commuter Assistance Program has been selected the winner of the 1999 Florida's Travel Choices Award presented by the Florida Department of Transportation Public Transit Office. The award recognizes Votran for promoting travel choices that ensure mobility, sustain the quality of the environment, and reduce energy consumption. The award was presented during a recent transit summit held at the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida in Tampa. Votran General Manager Ken Fisher.
What the award means is the Florida Department of Transportation has recognized Votran for going the extra mile in public transportation by encouraging people to use alternative forms of transportation and using those to ensure mobility. As everyone knows, I-4 has problems with congestion, so we're trying to encourage people to take alternative forms of transportation to minimize that congestion. By doing that, though, they help the environment by reducing the emissions that are contributed to the environment, and they also save money in parking fees and commuting costs into the Orlando area. So they help the environment, improve the quality of life in the area, and help improve the mobility of the area by trying alternative forms of transportation. And that's what the Florida Department of Transportation is trying to encourage. I think they recognize that they can no longer simply add lanes of highway, that they've got to encourage people to make efficient use of those highways to help both the environment and improve the mobility.
Votran's commuter assistance programs include park and ride lots near I-4 in Orange City and Deltona, a ride-share database, van pooling, and the Volusia Downtown Orlando I-4 Express. The goal of Votran's commuter assistance program is to reduce gridlock on Interstates 4 and 95. More than 17,000 Volusia County residents commute daily to employment in Orange, Seminole, and Brevard counties, mostly in single-occupant vehicles. And speaking of Volusia County's public transit system, Votran will celebrate 25 years of public transportation services to Volusia County. Plans for the observance, which will begin in March, include tributes to Votran riders and employees, an illustrated bus, a new musical jingle for radio ads, and a video to be used for community outreach and employee orientations. A week-long calendar of activities is planned in conjunction with American Public Transit Week during September.
Votran got started 25 years ago. There was what I understand, a private company operating jitney buses with Volkswagen-type vans. And what happened during the early years, during the 60s in public transportation, is a lot of the private companies were going out of business. They were unable to support themselves with the fares that were being charged. Municipalities, county governments stepped in, felt that mobility needed to be provided to the community and to those residents that are unable to access automobiles, afford automobiles, drive automobiles. So municipal governments, such as county governments, stepped in and formed public transportation operations and subsidized those operations.
Votran's more than 200 employees oversee operation of 50 buses, 4 trackless trolleys, and 33 paratransit vehicles with additional contracted services. Votran fixed route and paratransit services travel over 2.5 million miles annually with more than 2.8 million passenger boardings. Votran had its beginnings in 1975, September of that year, when the Volusia County Council created the East Volusia Transportation Authority. VOTRAN began operation with 28 buses and 3 paratransit vehicles that covered 14 routes in the greater Daytona Beach area. Along the way, there have been several milestones. In 1993, the County Council approved creation of a county-wide transportation system, and VOTRAN became the provider of transportation to all social service organizations and the transportation disadvantaged. A new state-of-the-art transfer plaza in Daytona Beach opened in June of that year. During 1994, VOTRAN assumed transportation services formerly operated by the Council on Aging. This included 35 vehicles, 50 employees, and oversight of the $1.5 million Medicaid contract. VOTRAN also began service in West Volusia and established connector service between West Volusia and Daytona Beach. In 1995, VOTRAN began service in southeast Volusia and started a connector route to Port Orange and Daytona Beach. In 1998, the County Council dedicated a new mobility management center in South Daytona to house VOTRAN's administration and operations. 4 new commuter assistance programs were launched, and those were the ones we told you about winning the Department of Transportation award. During 2000, VOTRAN is expected to begin beach tram service from a new intermodal transportation facility in Daytona Beach, fixed route service to northwest Volusia, and a Bikes on Buses program. Sadly, during the previous fiscal year, there were 4,317 reported incidents of domestic violence in Volusia County. Based on reported incidents, domestic violence in Volusia County strikes about 2 out of every 100 persons. However, many incidents of domestic violence are not reported. 80% of the victims of domestic violence in our community are women. And according to Sheriff's Captain Craig Broughton, the problem of domestic violence isn't getting any better.
We deal with people who, from all facets of society, from the affluent to the lower income groups. It transcends all social borders, professions. We deal with people who are dead sober. We deal with people in various stages of intoxication. There's a few things that are fairly consistent. Victims, for a variety of reasons, are generally going to end their cooperation shortly after the time of the arrest. And that changes the way the police must conduct their investigations, because everything we do must be predicated upon the assumption that we're going to be dealing with a recanting victim in the future. And the use of these cameras, for example, in capturing valuable photographic evidence of the injuries will allow the state attorney's office in many cases, unfortunately not all, but in many cases, to go forward even without a cooperating victim.
In an effort to stem the tide of domestic violence, the Volusia County Council has given the green light to a request by Sheriff Bob Vogel to participate in a Stop Violence Against Women grant, which will develop and strengthen law enforcement and prosecution strategies to combat violent crimes against women. This grant program of almost $10,000 will pay for the purchase of 100 cameras, which will be used to document evidence of domestic violence. In addition, the Sheriff's Office has committed to deliver a 3-day domestic violence investigation course for area law enforcement officers. Broughton said the grant funds are part of a multi-dimensional effort to reduce domestic violence and apprehend and prosecute those who commit domestic violence.
Daytona Beach International Airport. Why suffer a stress-filled drive on I-4 when Daytona Beach International Airport is so close by?
Wow, they are breathtaking.
This visitor from New York is getting her first look at one of Florida's West Indian manatees. When the St. Johns River drops below 68 degrees, the manatees head for warmer water. Here at Blue Springs State Park, the water is a consistent 72 degrees. Now, that may feel a little bit chilly to you and me, but it's just the ticket for these marine mammals. Now, once they get here, there's very little food in the spring run, so they spend their time playing or lying around on the bottom.
Well, we average probably at this time of year 50 to 70 per day, sometimes more on a cold front. We've had 110 individual manatees, not at one time, but they have come in for this season, December and January. 10 of those have been calves.
As the temperature warms up through the day, the manatees leave the spring to feed on the vegetation in the river. But there's one sea cow in particular that has a special attachment to the park.
Georgia was an orphan calf back in the early 90s in Georgia. And she was probably a week old when she was captured because her mother had died. SeaWorld rehabilitated her for probably a little over 6 years. Then in April of '97, she was released here at Blue Spring. And then in May of this year, she gave birth to a calf. And she is human imprinted, which is very hard when you're a park with swimmers. And she did frequent here in the summer. So now she's had the calf. She's a little more standoffish, which is what the biologist hoped she would be. She went probably 15 miles to have her calf, 15 miles away from Blue Spring Run. So she's come back periodically to check out the the warm water source, and she's a regular visitor now.
While the manatees are the main attraction during the colder months, there is plenty of wildlife to be seen. During the 2 hours we were at the park, we saw schools of fish, turtles, an alligator, an osprey, and other water birds. But there's much more to see. Some visitors choose to pitch a tent and camp out, and some stay overnight in one of the cabins.
Well, we have 6 cabins. They're 2-bedroom, 1 bath, kitchenette, fireplace, really nice and secluded in this hammock, which means shady place to Mukin Indians. And we have wildlife walks through here. If you camp in here at night, you'll go down and either see the manatee or wildlife roaming around. Very secluded, very quiet. Screened-in porch to keep some of the mosquitoes away.
Guests staying in the cabins have spotted black bear and red fox, but Mr. Harris tells me that squirrels, raccoons, and bobcats are most frequently seen. Now, the park also offers outdoor activities for the family. You can take a walk on a nature trail or canoe down the St. John's. There's also a picnic pavilion and a playground for the little ones. Along the walkway beside the spring run, there are kiosks that explain the different features of this area, including the historical background. Louis Thursby built this house back in 1871. His family was the first to permanently settle right here at Blue Spring. Now, back then, their only contact with the outside world was through steamboat, and those steamboats parked right here at the springs, and on board were things like mail and supplies for the families in the area. Even though the park is open 365 days a year, right now the Thursby House is only open 1 weekend a year, and that's during the Manatee Festival, which will be held January 22nd and 23rd. There will be environmental and conservation displays, rides, music, dancing, arts and crafts, and much, much more. This is a fundraiser with proceeds to benefit the Blue Springs State Park Wish List, area educational scholarships, and Greater Orange City organizations. Now, the festival will be held at Valentine Park in Orange City. To get there, take 1792 to West French Avenue. If you're coming from I-4, go to exit 54 and follow the signs. For those wanting to visit Blue Springs State Park, a shuttle bus will take festival goers to the park free of charge. Admission to the festival is $4 for adults and just $1 for kids ages 4 to 10. For more information on the festival, call area code 904-775-9224. That's 775-9224. For Volusia Magazine, I'm Holly Smith.
Dave Byron is ready with his interview concerning the county's efforts to lure more airline traffic to Daytona Beach International Airport. With existing flights out of Daytona at near capacity, more seats are what we need. So let's go now to Volusia County Community Information Director Dave Byron and find out how the county plans to accomplish that.
Thank you, Pam, and happy 2000, everyone. In an effort to improve air service to the western part of the United States, Daytona Beach International Airport has made a serious offer to Trans World Airlines. With the assistance of Volusia County's tourism authorities, the county-managed airport has pledged more than $500,000 for a daily flight to TWA's hub in St. Louis. From there, travelers would be able to make connections to numerous western cities. County and airport leaders believe the offer to TWA is the kind of incentive package that will lure additional air carriers to Daytona Beach. That's our subject today, additional air service at Daytona Beach International Airport, and our guest is Steve Cook, the Director of Air Service Marketing and Community Outreach at Daytona Beach International Airport. I know that you have an offer out there for Trans World Airlines based in St. Louis. What's on the table, Steve?
Well, we began talking with them last May, and we've had a lot of conversation with TWA. And the offer basically is to try to assist them with marketing as well as an escrow account to basically ensure some of the downside risk with the operation. We began the discussion thinking they would do a 58% load factor. They need to do at least a 65% load factor to make the deal feasible in Daytona Beach. So we basically said, we'll give you $1,300 if you're under 65%, or if you're over, it will generate a credit. This is basically negotiation, though, and I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth before we reach the end.
Yeah, so in other words, you know, this is what the county has put on the table right now, and the situation could change. Obviously, Steve, one would assume, you know, TWA, a well-known carrier. I guess they're, what, about the 9th largest?
They're the 9th largest carrier. They have a hub in St. Louis.
Right.
They have 345 domestic departures a day in St. Louis. The program we're talking about here in Daytona Beach would connect with 47 cities each day. And what it would do is basically open up the Midwest for Volusia County.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, as you've looked at the flights that are available out of Daytona Beach and so forth, there's certainly no secret that we are stronger to the points in the eastern part of the country. It's a little bit more difficult to go west, and I guess that's what you're saying, is that this would really enhance the ability for the traveler to go west out of Daytona Beach.
Absolutely.
And no Atlanta either.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have a way to get around Atlanta. You'd have a competitive situation with Delta to some extent, particularly for the major cities. The Midwest actually is fairly strong for Daytona Beach. We've checked with the CVB, and there's a lot of people that get in their cars in the Midwest and drive to Daytona Beach. And what we would like to do is put those people in airplanes.
So you put the offer on the table for TWA, Steve. What's the process from here?
Process is really a back and forth discussion about what we would like to do and what they would require. I think we're going to probably take another trip up to St. Louis. I expect to do that next month to see if we can kind of narrow it down to what's feasible with Daytona Beach and TWA. But we're optimistic. We think there's room to hope that the service will come here.
Obviously, you're a ways away from, you know, finalizing this, but I would assume that, you know, there's been some discussions in the past, and this is a real viable opportunity.
It's viable. Our claim to fame now is basically we lost 134 seats a day last July when Delta substituted the RJs for the MD-88s.
Right.
And that's put a strain on the market. Our inventory here is very, very tight. You know, our load factors here at Daytona Beach are on the order of 85% right now.
This is, I guess, in the airline industry is about capacity, isn't it?
It is, and you know, we need more seats in this market. This deal could provide them, and so we're very excited about it.
And I guess when you go to call on a potential airline, that's one of the points that you make, is that, you know, there's seats, that we need seats.
Absolutely. We get far more complaints about not being able to get a seat now than we do about the fare structure. So, you know, we need more seats. There's an opportunity for an airline to come to Daytona Beach and make money, and that's the message we're putting out in the market.
The kind of money that is on the table, Steve, with TWA, I guess it could exceed $500,000 with if the TDCs come through and so forth. I guess that sort of signals the fact that, number one, Daytona Beach, Volusia County is serious about air service, and I guess number two, I guess that's what the type of thing it's going to take to make something happen here.
It is. It's a situation where we are a secondary airport. We're not an Orlando International Airport, and we have to try harder to make these deals. Other airports, such as Melbourne, are in the same boat. And so we have to think of creative ways, basically, that we can attract the airline to the area.
I know that, you know, the public and surveys and so forth has said that they support, you know, using public funds to get additional air service at Daytona Beach. But I'm also, you know, in looking at the packages that you've put out in the past, and this one, TWA, a lot of it seems to be tied around joint promotional or marketing dollars, and maybe that's the way to go here.
Yeah, basically what we're doing is we're trying to pull all our resources together in terms of the county council, the ad agencies, and the airport, and basically so everybody steps forward in unity. We have strength,
Right.
and basically are able to make the best proposal we possibly can. That's the idea.
Now, I know that we've talked over and over again, but it's probably worth, Steve, touching on it one more time, and that is the fact that obviously the community would like to see the airport get additional jet service. Obviously, you're working feverishly to do that. What is the, I guess, the picture and the hurdles that you have to face here? What's the process here?
Well, Volusia County tends to be more fragmented. You have to go through a lot of gates to get to where you need to get on any given deal. I'd say the base thing here is we need more economic development, you know, in the county as well. That's the thing that drives air service more than anything else. But I would say there's probably a little bit too much fragmentation in the county. And I think if we were to work more together on some of these deals, I think we would be stronger.
But I think you also made another key point, Steve, and that is, you know, in listening to what the current carriers have said, what those who have left have said, is that it's about the price of the ticket, is it not? How much money
yes.
they can make here.
Absolutely. What tends to happen is airports and communities are concerned about putting people on airplanes. Airlines are really not concerned with that. They're concerned with revenue. I mean, you could put half the number of people on the plane, and if they earn more revenue, that's the deal they're going to want. And it tends to be a different point of view, a different perspective between the airline and the community. But that's where they're coming from. Their businesses, they want to generate as much income as they can, as much profit as they can, and we have to realize that when we're dealing with them.
The point that, you know, it seems to get lost a lot of times is the fact that what airlines seem to have said is that they need more business travelers. They need
Correct.
those travelers who, I guess business travelers, because they oftentimes book tickets at the last minute and so forth, they pay a much higher ticket price.
Correct. The way the system is basically structured is the airlines have X number of leisure tickets, X number of business tickets, and they want to sell the business tickets. So if you book at the last minute, you're basically going to get a fare for a leisure ticket, a business ticket. In the case of Daytona Beach, you've really got to book out about 60 days in advance to get your best price, your best ticket price. And what happens here now is we have so few seats is the leisure tickets get sold up, and you call 2 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in advance, and you get a fare quote for what is really a business ticket, because the seats just are not available. And so that's the problem, and really if we get more seats, it will alleviate that problem.
Yeah, and of course the ticket prices, we well know, particularly in an area as price sensitive as ours is, that's a big issue, the price of the ticket. But there, you know, in fairness also, Steve, there has been progress made. I know Delta, for example, is worked carefully with the airport to try to make sure that those fares stay in line. Is that happening?
Well, yes. You know, there was a much more difficult situation. If you go back about 18 months, there was some concern that Delta was doing very, very poorly, and they were even at one point looking at this market in terms of not even serving it or serving it in a different way. They have come up with, working with the airport, a fare differential condition, which has really improved their yield in Daytona Beach. And
yield is profit.
Is profit, and basically, so we're not nearly as concerned about that eventuality. And in fact, you know, the improved yield has created a situation where we can go to another airline and say that, you know, this is a good opportunity for you. We've got the loads, we've got the yield, and you can come in and make money, and it's something where you can grow. And so that's the message we're putting out.
You know, speaking of Delta, you know, it's certainly Delta has been our flagship carrier, you know, right from the get-go, continues to be. One of the objectives out of the strike force, perhaps the major objective, was to make sure that Delta remained comfortable and profitable in Daytona Beach. So now you have an offer out there of $500,000 or so to TWA. What do you say to Delta in response to that?
Well, basically what we do with Delta, Continental, American, and U.S. Air is we've made them the same offer.
Okay.
On exactly the same day. We haven't made this offer to give TWA something that we would not give Delta.
Okay, good point.
And so, you know, Delta is out there. We would love for them to put in a plane to Cincinnati, for example. We think that would be a good market for us. We'd love for Continental to go to Houston out of Daytona Beach. We think that would be a good market. And so we're trying to really encourage all of our airlines, not just TWA.
You know, I've heard that, you mentioned Continental, I've heard that you've talked to Continental about possibility of service to Cleveland.
Yes.
Now I'm hearing you saying Houston. What's new on that front?
Well, they've told us basically that they're looking at an RJ coming into Daytona Beach in the fourth quarter of 2000. We have been talking with them about accelerating that. They have a new hub in Cleveland. It would be a good market for
Cleveland. I would think would be a really good market.
Good market for this area. They have all kinds of new facilities in Cleveland. And so we're going to be going to visit Continental about the Cleveland service to try to get that moved up on their calendar, but also talk about Houston, because Houston is kind of something, nobody's ever really talked to them about that in relation to Daytona Beach. The numbers are pretty good in terms of the passengers we think we can generate. So,
and they're real strong in Houston, are they not?
Very, very strong in Houston. So we're going to be talking with them about that as well. But we're continuing to talk with Delta as well about other opportunities here. But we're talking with a carrier that has been a real comer in the airline industry called Atlantic Coast Airlines.
Right.
And they serve Washington Dulles. And we're on their list. We're talking to them. We're cautiously optimistic that something might develop with them in the year 2000.
But of course, we've tried to develop international charter business and so forth, continue to look in that direction. What do you see on the charter front?
Well, our service to the Bahamas has been very, very strong, but our focus on that is basically to try to attract in-transit service from European carriers that are headed southbound to Latin America.
That was similar to that LTU deal.
Similar to that, looking at some of the UK carriers as well as the German carriers, but a number of them stop in this state and then they move on to a destination in South America. That, we think, would be the way to go for that, because doing that, we could basically sell some hotel rooms in Daytona Beach and start building that business here in a smaller way, rather than trying to attract the entire plane load of people here. And so that's going to be our focus for 2000.
Well, Steve, it's great to start the year talking about the airport. Again, it looks like there are some very positive things that could occur, and I guess we just have to keep working hard, and things will have a way of working out, I guess.
Absolutely, Dave. Just keep working hard and keep working together.
Thanks, Dave. And thank you for watching Volusia Magazine. If you have any questions regarding our program, please give us a call at one of the numbers you see on your screen. And don't forget to listen to Volusia Today, Volusia County Government's public information radio program. Volusia Today airs every Tuesday morning at 8:30 on radio station WNDB 1150 AM and every Sunday morning at 6:30 on WHOG 95.7 FM. For Volusia Magazine, I'm Pam Tenyas. Have a good evening.